Throughout 2024, we've developed Gateway, a KSP-like game but using real-life rockets, for now Starship. We have been hard at work, from a simple idea all the way to a stable start of a space game. Today, we'll do a recap on some of the key points that happened in 2024, and also give a small hint at what's coming in 2025. My name is Kion, welcome to the Gateway Game Project, and let's get started. In March of 2024, Lewis posted the first ever screenshot of a prototype main menu for Gateway, quote, "Ever get the urge to start making a game?" Man, I think I'll never forget that post. But it actually doesn't start there. You see, Lewis actually started prototyping way back in February of 2024 with Unity. Now, if you're not familiar with games or you're not in the game development industry, you're probably asking, what the hell is Unity? Well, Unity is a game engine just like Unreal Engine. Lewis first used Unity until realizing Unreal Engine was way easier to make things realistic, along with simplifying the process of creating the game, which is one of the main reasons why we chose it as the game engine for Gateway. Basically, a game engine is the framework used to create the game. It makes the process of creating a game much easier with settings and other features that can simplify the process of development. You can basically think of it as the engine of a rocket, in the sense that it provides the basis for the rocket to work, if you get what I mean. Like the engine, like thrust output? Now, maybe that was not the best example that I could have given, but hope it gets the point across. Here's a nerdy fact about Unity. It was used by Kerbal Space Program in most games out there. Now, Unreal Engine is used by several games, and if you want a funny example, Fortnite. In these clips, you can see Lewis testing some sort of gravity/thrust force and control system. But as mentioned, after seeing that Unreal Engine could help make the game faster, Lewis switched over to Unreal Engine. This main menu will go through several iterations, which will be showcased later in this video. Until now, all of the things that I mentioned were just Lewis doing all of this by himself, but here is where I step in. In March, shortly after I saw the original post, I messaged Lewis asking him if I could do the game logo and some other media stuff too. And here is how Gateway started. I suggested some names for, at the time, unnamed game. Now, I don't know what was wrong with my head back in the day, but for some reason all of my ideas started with virtual, meaning kind of like game, like virtual game, if you know what I mean. I suggested Virtual Space Explorer, Virtual Launch, and Virtual Spaceflight. And I'll tell you what, looking back at these names, they kind of felt a bit boring and a bit generalized, which I actually agreed on back then. We ran a poll on Lewis's Twitter account as we didn't have a dedicated account for the game back then. Out of 26 people who voted, Beyond was the top vote at 50% of people voting on this option. But we actually ignored that post and made Gateway the name instead. Now you're probably saying, what the hell, Kyle, why did you ignore the poll? After all, what is the point of a poll if you don't? Well, Gateway, as you know, is kind of like the doors to something very exciting, like the path to building like a sustainable life on Mars, like Gateway to Mars, the gateway to the moon. It's like the launch pad that you need to get into low Earth orbit. Maybe that didn't make sense, but we thought it was worth doing that instead because it sounded way cooler, basically. So after that, I made the logo that we all know and love, and this was the start of the Gateway Game Project as we know it today. Okay, now let's talk about the first few concepts and the start of the assembly building UI. I first went through making a rough concept in Photoshop. This concept, which is the current one in the making, includes things such as a parts menu to build vehicles, a staging graphic showcasing the different stages, options such as save and load vehicles, launch and exit, workspace and other tools to help build vehicles, and finally the version/build number and name at the top. Now if you're wondering, this is not my Mega Man model. It was just a placeholder that Lewis made until we had the time to start working on those assets. Again, this is a concept, and some of the things might change as we developed and innovate this game. So what you see here might possibly change in the near future. One of the key goals for Gateway is to share all of our progress with not only our community, but with the entire spaceflight community as well. This was a key decision if we wanted to start sharing our progress with the world to get people excited about this new and upcoming game. After creating an email, we created our Twitter/X account where we post updates about Gateway, and with our first post posted, gosh, why is it called post? Why couldn't you just keep the tweet? Twitter! Anyways, as I was saying, with our first post posted, we were ready to start our journey. It's so funny looking back at this account with the old profile picture and with only 4 followers. As we talked about in our previous section, we want to try and document every step of the way as best as we can. One day, I wanted to start creating Gateway monthly updates, partially because I had no videos to edit back at the time. So we decided to create this YouTube channel where you're watching this video on right now. The idea was simple: create a YouTube channel to post monthly updates, general videos related to Gateway like trailers and other things, and maybe even live stream some Gateway gameplay as well. So after creating the YouTube channel, I went right away to start creating our first video, which you can watch with the card in top right here, or the link in the video description. Also at the time, we started to post bi-weekly updates on Twitter/X, basically a small thread with some updates from Gateway. As it's kind of obvious, we need models for Gateway. We were originally going to use Lewis's old models with a slight modification to make them a bit more detailed, but as we talked about in our first monthly update about models, we needed to make the models from scratch to make them better optimized for a game and also make them a bit higher detailed and clean. Lewis first started working on some rings and some dome sections for the booster model. I soon followed that by making the orbital tank farm assets myself for use in the game. These assets were made in Blender, which is one of the most popular softwares out there to create 3D models and renders, and the best part of all is that it's open source and completely free to download and use. For the water deluge farm, we decided to use a pre-existing model that Lewis made, which is decently detailed and good enough for the game. Along with the models that I mentioned, there are a few that we needed to make to get a nice head start for the game. As we talked about, this game is, for now, Starship related, so we needed to model both vehicles and Starbase related hardware for the game. We first started by modeling, as mentioned, the Super Heavy Booster model, which got 2 model versions made. What? Why 2? We're probably going to do another video on this topic, but the way that we optimize the game is by removing unnecessary parts from vehicles between the assembly view and the launch view. Essentially, we make 2 versions of the vehicle models, one for build and one for launch. But we'll probably reserve that for another video in a bit more detail too. So, as I was saying, we made 2 versions of the booster. This booster model then got finished in July, and if you want to watch a showcase video that we made, there will be a link in the video description. I also started to work on the current tank farm models, beginning with the large horizontal propellant tanks, and then expanding with things such as the large blast walls and nitrogen pressure tanks, etc. After that, we started to work on the production side, where we made buildings such as the Star Factory, the High and Mega Bays, the Stargate, and other facilities at the production/build site. After that, we started to work on the first tower model for Pad A, aka Pad A's Orbital Launch and Integration Tower. It's kind of a mouthful, to be honest. Lewis started by making the base and then working on the tower by each segment. After that, Lewis then modeled the chopsticks and carriage system to go along with the main tower model. With this, the main part of the tower is done, with just the ship quick disconnect arm remaining to be modeled and fitted. I also, as we didn't have it yet, I worked on the OLM-A model for Pad A. It features some placeholder materials and textures, but maybe once I have a bit more time, I'll refine it and add some more things like the clamps and other details. Okay, now let's go from Pad A over to Pad B models. As you might know, SpaceX is racing to get the second orbital launch pad at Starbase finished and ready to be operated. With this, Lewis put together some models to not only showcase the work that's being done to the rest of the space community, but also for use in Gateway. As new parts for the second orbital launch mount, or OLM for short, started to show up, Lewis quickly got to modeling them to put them together to also see how all of these parts would look once assembled. The first parts that showed up were the pedestals, which are the small little legs to help assemble the hardware, in the bottom layer. It was a bit difficult for Lewis to model these accurately due to the lack of photos at the time, but eventually Lewis has made it more accurate as time has gone on. Next, let's go to the middle layer. This is arguably the most important layer as it holds all of the clamps where the booster sits on. Because, well... yeah, you don't want that to happen to your rocket. And speaking of clamps, in July, potential clamps for the second orbital launch mount were spotted at McGregor. Lewis modeled these a few months after, but were not fully accurate because there were only 2 photos of the clamps to work with. After a few months, it was spotted again, but this time in a retracted position. Lewis quickly refined his model, but there was a problem. The clamps could no longer fit in the OLM because of the mounting points weren't in the right position. So we'll have to wait and see, and we'll keep an eye out for any potential hints to whether these are the actual clamps for the second orbital launch mount or not. Finally, we have the top layer of the OLM, which is the water-cooled steel plate / pancake. I love a good pancake at the start of my day. Oh wait, that's not the pancake that we're talking about. No, you don't want to eat steel. Just a tip. It's not my cup of tea, but I don't want to eat steel. Whatever. This plate gets cooled by water, which then gets sprayed out through holes, just like the steel plate under Pad A's OLM. Over time, Lewis has refined his model and has added new hardware, such as the manifolds that connect the steel plate to the GSE or ground support equipment. While Lewis worked on the OLM2 model, I started to make our Tower B model. Now no, this is not making a new tower model. You see, if you watched our previous update, you probably know, but for those who haven't watched it yet, you're in for a treat. At least I hope. So basically, your boy Kion here just took our Tower A model and made it look like Tower B. So you're probably going through the internet through the longest rabbit holes in history to find out how I possibly made this. Dude, come on man, just move on with the video. Stop with the funny jokes. Just move on with the video, please. So basically, I took all the parts that weren't on Tower A and added a few things like the top railing and updated the base to make it look like Tower B. Yeah. It's that revolutionary, I know. Also, on top of the second OLM, it's actually beneath if you get the joke. Lewis started modeling the flame trench and water-cooled flame diverter. So let's start with the trench and then move into the diverter. The SpaceX started construction of the flame trench around August. Since then, they have now fully excavated the soil for the trench and now have started to pour concrete into the rat slab, which is basically a blinding layer for the soil and a thin layer to level out the surface for the trench. You can see how deep and wide this trench will be in the commodities pipe, aka the propellant pipes, that will fuel the booster. These commodities will then go up to the booster quick disconnect, which we'll see won't be on the OLM but a separate structure, as seen by the concrete piles by the side and the concrete base that it will sit on. After making the trench, Lewis worked on the water-cooled flame diverter that will divert the exhaust gases produced by the super heavy booster at the point of liftoff out and away from getting back and potentially hitting and damaging important hardware on the launch mount. This diverter is similar to other flame trench diverters used by other pads in the fact that it has many water-cooled pipes to help cool it down. The way these pipes work is that they're supplied water by a manifold and bleed the water through tiny holes. You can actually see where these holes are by the darkened part of the pipe. Lewis then combined all of these models along with some theorized stuff to create a concept model for Gateway and to show off to the rest of the space community. Over the course of the year, Lewis started to learn Unreal Engine 5, the game engine that Gateway is using. As a side note, Lewis can spend a huge time on this side of development due to needing to make models for his own work that will be also used in Gateway. At the start, Lewis started making some basic UI menus, but these were later scrapped for better designs. Later, he imported models to test if they worked. And spoiler, they did not. There are a few things that needed to be changed when using a model for a game rather than just in regular 3D software like Blender. One of those are normals. A normal refers to a vector that is perpendicular or normal to a surface at a specific point according to Adobe. Normals are either outside or inside, but usually when rendering 3D software, they really don't matter. When importing models into a game engine, the faces that you want to see need to be outside or else you won't see them. Here's an example of what I mean. In the first image, you can see what an object looks like with the normals facing inside, and in the second, you can see them with the normals facing outside like we want them to. Next, Lewis tested some basic graphic effects including sky, planet atmosphere, lens flares, etc. Finally, Lewis worked on the asset test build UI, and likely the UI that will be in the first few versions of Gateway. This version of the UI includes the main menu and a simple play view. These UIs will be built upon in later updates. Now here is given all the work that we just recapped, we are so close to releasing our first build called the asset test build. Now, I know we have been saying this for a while, but I promise, it's very close to being done. There were delays to releasing the build due to Lewis being busy with some other work and me being busy with my most recent deep dive video, which by the way if you want to watch, there will be a link in the video description. In this build, we'll put every asset that we've made until now, all the in-game functions that we've made, and we will release it to the people that we've selected via now closed form. Now we also expanded the Gateway team as well. Right at the time where we started to remodel the vehicles and hardware for the game, we got together with some friends to help us out. This includes Josh Lowy Space and Joey from the Interstellar Gateway group, which if you want to follow them, there will be links in the video description. This brings the team to a total of 4. Now please don't start asking us in the comments where you can join us, as we're not trying to grow our team as of right now, as our main focus is to try to get the first few builds out as soon as we can, and to try to get this game into a good state of development as fast as we can. So yeah, that's a quick update. So that's what we have been doing in 2024 with the Gateway game project. As always, hope you enjoyed the video and let us know if you like this type of recap video. If you want to see more, don't forget to follow us on Twitter/X for more updates and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more monthly updates. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in our next monthly update coming soon.